Hello friends, I'm back again as promised in my previous video on pillars of Indian administration. So in our previous video, we have learned about the legislature. And in this video, part 2 of pillars of Indian administration, today we will learn about the executive. So we'll do a quick recap what we have studied. We have learned in the previous video. So it was about the legislature. The legislature, what was the legislature? Pillars, there are three pillars of Indian administration. First is the legislature, second is the executive, third is the judiciary. So the legislature is a law making body. So what is the main function of the legislature? It was a law-making body. It has various functions such as control over budget, control over executive, judicial, electoral, amendment of the constitutions, the mirror of public opinion, right of the legislature to remove the judges, and it acts as a board of directors. It was a quick recap. I hope you all have seen the video on the legislature and you all know what are the main functions of the legislature. If you wanted to know, if you have not seen my video and if you wanted to learn about this function, you can see my part 1 of pillars of Indian administration. So today I'll not take much of time. I'll just move to the part 2, that is the executive. So yes, the executive, the main function, the role of the executive is execution of law, enforcement of law. Executive is a part of government that enforces law and has a responsibility for a governance of state. The executive of government is one that has a sole authority and responsibility for the daily administration of the state bureaucracy. The division of power into separate branches of government is central to the republication of idea of separation of powers. So civil servants, bureaucracy. What is bureaucracy in the slide? It is civil servants. Civil servants plays a very, very important role in the function of executive from lowest to highest levels. It carries out day-to-day functions, administration, or for working of the government departments. The civil servants are neutral. They do not allow any political interference. They work on their responsibility and their job is to carry out laws and policies of the government without any political consideration. They are specially educated and trained persons. They ऐसे नहीं होता कि उनको हम ऐसे ही select कर लेते हैं. They are very trained persons. They उनको proper training दी जाती है, उनको specially educate किया जाता है, then उनको उनकी selection हमारी Indian government करती है. They are experts and professionals. They give expert advices and opinions as well as collect. वो लोग एक्सपर्ट एडवाइस भी देते हैं, ओपिनियंस भी देते हैं. दे कलेक्ट एंड क्लासिफाई डेटा, प्रेजेंट डेटा टू political executive on the basis of which later all the decisions are taken. So जो ministers हैं, all the ministers, all the government and all the ministries who are taking decisions, or like Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So who are running these ministries? These ministries are run by the civil servants who are the head, who are the whole responsible part of the execution of these ministries. They are appointed. The civil servants remain in the offices till attainment of the retirement age, usually up to the age of 55 or 60. They get regular and fixed salaries and are hierarchically organized into higher and lower relationships. I hope you all now, the basic concept of the executive is clear to you all. So who are the executive, or the what are the executive functions? We will go on to that slide. I told you in my previous slide also that what executive consists of: president, vice president, prime minister, cabinet secretaries, and the ministries. The following are the functions of executive: enforcement of laws. Primary function, the main function of the executive is enforcement of law. Enforcement means execution of law. Then the second function, appointment making functions. All the major appointments made by the chief executive are made by the chief executive, such as the President of India. President of India, please note, President of India appoints Chief Justice and other judges of the Supreme Court and High Courts, ambassadors, Advocate General of India, members of UPSC, governors and governors of the state, etc. Likewise, the members of the civil services are also appointed by the chief executive. Now, treaty making functions. Treaty making functions is also done by the executive. It is the responsibility of the executive to decide as to which treaties are to be signed with which countries. Like nowadays, our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, he is signing the treaties with other countries, and he is moving from one country to another to develop relations, so that there is a peace aman between all the other countries. जैसे कि हम लोगों ने भी देखा है कि पहले हम लोगों के relations other countries के साथ इतने अच्छे नहीं थे, इतने friendly नहीं थे, but एंड हमने ऐसी ट्रीटीज भी नहीं साइन की थी डिफरेंट कंट्रीज के साथ में, बट नाउ ही इज टेकिंग अ वेरी गुड स्टेप, जिससे कि वो डिफरेंट कंट्रीज के साथ different treaties to develop foreign relations. He's signing those. So he is signing those, but who is playing the role at the backstage? The role, the development of those treaties, the role check of those treaties is done by the executive. So here also it plays a very important role to related to treaty making functions. Next, defense, war, and peace functions. Defense, it is itself self-explanatory. War and peace functions also. Only one of the main key functions of the state is to defend and preserve the unity and integrity of the country and protect it in the event of external aggression or war. It's responsibility of the executive to undertake this work. To organize military for defense of the state, to prepare for fight and war if becomes necessary. Please note, if only becomes necessary, and to negotiate the sign peace settlement after every war. आप देखोगे wars होती हैं दो countries के बीच में, but उन वॉर्स को रोका कैसे जाता है? वो ऐसे रोका जाता है while signing a peace settlement after every war. So उन वॉर्स को रोका जाता है by signing a peace settlement. तो वो कौन करवाता है? It is done by the executive. The executive is also the final judge of nature of the threat to security of the country. It has a prime responsibility to take all such steps as are needed in the interest of security and integrity of the state. The chief executive of the state is also the supreme commander of the armed forces of state. In point 3, we learned that the one of the key functions of the executive is treaty making functions. Again, I'll come on foreign policy, making the code of making the conduct for foreign relations. And the next point is policy making. So the foreign policy also defines, like, if we have to sign any treaty, if we have to sign any MOA between in between our country and the other country, then the policy making, the conduct of foreign relations is done by the executive. And Ministry of External Affairs, it plays a very important role in this foreign policy making and conduct of foreign relations. The executive formulates the goal of a national interest and fixes the priorities. It first formulates the foreign policy for the nation, then it implements it for securing the defined goals of national interest. The executive appoints the ambassadors of the state and the other states. Next is policy making. Modern welfare of state has to carry out a large number of functions for securing the socio-economic, cultural development of its people. It has to formulate policies, prepare short-term, long-term plans, and implement these. All actions of the state are guided by definite policies and plans. It is the executive which undertakes the task of policy making and developmental planning. These are the two important functions of the executive, because by these state carry out the objective of promoting the welfare of its people. Now, function related to lawmaking. Lawmaking, we have learned that the main function of legislature is lawmaking, but lawmaking, however, the executive also plays a very important role in lawmaking. In this sphere, the role of executive have been increased by leaps and bounds. In parliamentary system, ministers are also members of legislature, and they play a leading role in lawmaking. Most of the bills for legislature are introduced and piloted by them in the legislature. Most of the time, the legislature is spent in passing the government bills. The bills are passed by legislature, becomes laws only after the consent of those ministers. Next is lawmaking under the system of delegated legislation. The system of delegated legislation has considerably increased the lawmaking role of the executive. Under this system, the legislature delegates one of its lawmaking powers to the executive. The executive then makes the rules on the basis of these power. The amount of delegated legislation made by the executive far outweighs the laws passed by the legislation. That was all for today. I would request you all to please subscribe my channel, like my video. I'll come back again next Saturday with the part 3 of Pillars of Indian Administration. If you have any query, you may please write on indianactsandcode@gmail.com. If you wanted to know anything about the legal system of India, about Pillars of Indian Administration, or any other topic which you require any assistance or guidance, you may please write on indianactsandcode@gmail.com. I'll come back again next Saturday with another video. Thank you very much.